three men: a failed schoolteacher, a failed painter, and an island nation nobody in the West took seriously. None of them start out as monsters. One of them starts out as a communist. One of them starts out as a corporal nobody remembers. One of them starts out just trying to buy oil. And in less than 20 years, the three of them will burn the entire planet down together. This is the story of how the world sleepwalked into its deadliest war. One broken promise, one shrug, one just this once at a time. Rewind to 1902. A restless young Italian named Benito Mussolini skips town for Switzerland to dodge the draft. He throws himself into socialism, union organizing, radical newspapers, calls to tear down the monarchies of Europe. It gets him arrested, deported, arrested again. Eventually he does his military service anyway, tries his hand at teaching children, and comes back to politics as one of Italy's loudest socialist voices. He's good at it, really good. His words move crowds, and for years he hates war. He even riots against Italy's invasion of Libya. He believes, genuinely believes, that he is Germany's chosen savior. And like Mussolini before him, he builds a dictatorship around himself. Then 1914 happens, and something in him flips. If the World War breaks the old monarchies apart, he reasons, maybe it clears the ground for revolution. So the anti-war socialist becomes pro-war overnight, and his own party throws him out for it. Cut loose from socialism, Mussolini invents something new. Not workers united against owners, but a nation united by blood and pride. He calls it fascism. The dream is a new Roman Empire, stitched back together by force. Italy comes out of the First World War on the winning side, but the spoils are thin, the economy is wrecked, and the government is weak. People are angry, and angry people want someone who promises to fix everything fast. By 1922, Mussolini doesn't ask the king for power. He marches on Rome with his own private army and takes it. Europe has its first fascist dictatorship. Now go north, to Germany, the country that lost. The Treaty of Versailles doesn't just defeat Germany, it humiliates it. Territory stripped away. The army capped at a skeleton force. No air power. Crushing reparations the country can't possibly pay. Add a collapsing economy on top of that wound, and you get a population desperate for someone, anyone, who promises to restore their pride. Enter a former soldier with a talent for public speaking and a grievance he cannot let go of: Adolf Hitler. He'd fought in the trenches of the First World War, and nobody took the loss more personally than he did. In 1923, he tries to seize power by force in Munich. It fails, he's arrested, but the failure only builds the legend, and 10 years later, in 1933, he's handed the chancellorship legally through the front door. Now to the other side of the world. For over 2 centuries, Japan sealed itself off from outsiders until American warships forced the door open and dictated the terms of trade. Unequal treaties gutted Japan's economy, and the country had almost no natural resources of its own to fall back on. So Japan did what empires do. It went looking for someone else's. War with China wins Japan influence over Korea until the Western powers step in and simply take the spoils for themselves, freezing Japan out of the very region it had just fought to control. Furious and underestimated, Japan turns on Russia next and stuns the world by winning. Korea is fully annexed. Then, in the First World War, Japan quietly scoops up Germany's Pacific colonies while the West is looking elsewhere. Finally, in 1931, an explosion on a railway in Manchuria, very possibly staged by Japan's own army, becomes the pretext for a full invasion. 3 nations, 3 grievances, 3 governments that believe they were built to rule others. Hitler starts testing the boundaries almost immediately. He builds an air force in direct violation of the treaty that ended the last war. Nothing happens. He marches troops back into the demilitarized Rhineland, secretly under orders to retreat the instant anyone objects. Nobody does. Emboldened, Hitler sets his sights on something darker: living space for a growing German population, which, stripped of the euphemism, means territory taken from someone else. The Allies respond with a strategy that sounds reasonable and turns out to be catastrophic: appeasement. Give him a little, and maybe he'll stop asking. 1938, German troops walk into Austria. No resistance, absorbed. Next, Hitler demands the Sudetenland, a German-speaking region of Czechoslovakia. At a conference in Munich, where Czechoslovakia isn't even invited to speak for itself, the Allies hand it over, in exchange for a signed promise that he'll ask for nothing more. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain flies home waving that piece of paper, declaring peace for our time. Within months, Hitler's army swallows the rest of Czechoslovakia anyway. anyway. The promise was never worth the paper it was printed on. Mussolini wants a conquest of his own and picks a target he assumes can't fight back. A poorly equipped African nation, overrun anyway with brutal, disproportionate force. Italy also seizes Albania across the Adriatic. In China, another suspicious border incident gives Japan the excuse for a full-scale invasion. Beijing falls, Shanghai falls, and in the former capital, Nanking, Japanese forces commit atrocities against civilians so severe they still define the darkest chapter of the war in Asia. Back in Europe, Germany and Italy formalized their partnership with the Pact of Steel. Two dictatorships, one alliance. Hitler's next target is Poland, specifically the strip of Polish land separating Germany from its own territory of East Prussia. This time the Allies finally draw a line. Invade Poland, and it means war. But Hitler doesn't want to fight on two fronts at once, so he does the unthinkable. He strikes a deal with his ideological enemy, Joseph Stalin. Invade Poland together, split it in half, worry about betraying each other later. On September 1st, 1939, German tanks cross the Polish border. 2 days later, Britain and France declare war. The peace that took 20 years to build has lasted 20 years to the month. Poland falls fast, crushed between two invading armies at once. Then comes something historians call the phony war. Months where almost nothing happens. France leans on old First World War thinking, static defenses, cautious commanders, a reluctance to strike first. Britain, still hoping for a diplomatic way out, drops leaflets instead of bombs. Neither side seems ready for the war they've just declared. Both Britain and France try to keep the fighting as far from home as possible, eyeing Scandinavia, where neutral Norway is quietly funneling Swedish iron ore to Germany's war machine. Before the Allies can act, Hitler moves first, invading Denmark and Norway to secure that supply line. British and French troops land to stop him and are pushed back. Chamberlain resigns in disgrace. Winston Churchill takes his place, and the tone of the war changes overnight. Hitler's plan for Western Europe echoes the last war almost exactly. Smash through Belgium, defeat France quickly, then turn east against the Soviet Union. The Allies rush into Belgium to meet the invasion head-on, walking straight into a trap. To the south, German tanks pour through the Ardennes forest, a route the French had judged too rugged to bother defending. 50 German divisions break through where no one expected them, encircling the best of the Allied armies in days. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers are trapped against the coast at Dunkirk, and in one of the war's most extraordinary moments, ordinary British civilians sail their own boats across the channel to bring them home. With its strongest forces gutted, France falls. What Germany couldn't achieve in 4 years of trench warfare last time, it achieves in about 6 weeks now. Hitler assumes that with France defeated, Britain will simply sue for peace. Britain refuses, so Hitler turns to psychological pressure, leaving occupied France technically self-governing, just to make it look like Britain's oldest ally has switched sides. It doesn't work. Britain responds by attacking its former allies' fleet directly, denying Germany any chance of using it. To force Britain to the table for real, Hitler needs control of the skies over the Channel. Wave after wave of German bombers target British ports, then air bases, grinding down the vastly outnumbered Royal Air Force. Then Churchill orders a small, almost symbolic bombing raid on Berlin. It barely does any damage, but it enrages Hitler enough that he shifts the entire bombing campaign onto London itself. It's a fatal mistake. Civilians endure the Blitz with a resilience that becomes legend, and the shift away from RAF airfields gives Britain's fighters exactly the breathing room they need to recover and fight back. One final massive raid on London is repelled, German losses mount, and the invasion of Britain, the one thing that might have ended the war then and there, is quietly postponed. It will never happen. 3 men, 3 nations, 3 separate grievances that somehow, improbably, braided together into one alliance and one global catastrophe. And it didn't start with a grand master plan. It started with a jail sentence in Switzerland, a corporal's wounded pride, and a trade deal forced on an island nation 200 years earlier. History rarely announces itself. It just keeps score, until one day, the bill comes due for the whole world at once. Like and subscribe for more videos.